Hey everybody, this is Eric from TOURNA-MIX, the ultimate mix competition website, and today I wanted to give you my thoughts on a plugin called Reference from Mastering the Mix. Now this plugin has been out for a few years, but it was recently updated and it's a really cool update. Okay, and I can't wait to show it off. I've been using this plugin, the original version of it, that is, on virtually every mix for the last 2 years. I'm a big fan, and the update is super neat. Let's take a look. All right, so if you're not familiar with what this plugin is, it's just a really handy way to compare your mix or your master to something else. It could be a reference song, like a commercial mix from another artist. It could be a different mix of the same song, like maybe an artist or producer mix that you're trying to beat, or maybe it's an earlier mix that you did that you've done some revisions and you want to check back and make sure you're on the right course. So there's many different ways to use it, but that's essentially what it is. You load in a song, okay, and then you can switch between the original, which is the session you're in, or the original mix, and the reference just by clicking those. And in fact, you don't even have to move your cursor down. You can just keep clicking in the same place, you see, and switch between the two. Very handy. Or you can even use your left arrow key to switch. You see, if I move my cursor over here, I can still switch, okay? So that's what the plugin is, and I'm not going to explain it any more than that. I'm just going to actually show you practical examples. If you go to the Mastering the Mix website, there's a 15-minute video there that shows all the bells and whistles, and I think it's so well done, there was kind of no point in me, going over all that stuff again. So I'm just going to kind of go right into it and show you how this thing works. All right, so one of the coolest things with this update is actually a new feature, something that wasn't in the original plugin that Tom has added to this to really enhance the value of this thing, and it's called Ref Send. So here we have Reference loaded up. You can see it here at the end of my mix chain. Just going to minimize that. And what you do with Ref Send is you load it at the start of your chain. Okay, I'm going to go find it here. See Ref Send. All right, now once that's on, you don't have to do anything with it. You actually can just close it. As long as it's on, you're good. And if I open Reference now, I have Reference Send loaded in here as a reference. So what does this mean? So what this plugin does is it sends a copy of your current mix or your master, and it sends it right into Reference, essentially bypassing your mix bus or mastering chain. So we can easily compare and see if our mix bus or mastering chain is actually helping, right? I mean, as you know, when you add a bunch of plugins, like, here I have a compressor, here I've got some saturation, whatever, it's very easy for the volume to change, and often it'll go up on you. And sometimes we're kind of lazy about checking things. We throw a tape plugin on and we just assume it's going to help, stuff like that. And by the end of the chain, we might have something that's a bit louder, that actually sounds worse, but fools us into thinking it's better, right? And that's a problem. And actually, that's exactly what happened to me in this mix. When I was making this tutorial, I realized that my original mix, before all this mix bus stuff, was actually better. Pretty embarrassing, but I'm about to show it to you. Okay, so I've set this up to loop in the chorus of the song, and we're going to check and see what my mix bus chain actually did to this mix. We're just going to use our ears for now, and we're going to see which one sounds better. And again, this is pretty embarrassing, so give me some credit here for showing this to you. All right, here we go. So the original mix is the one that has the mix bus processing on it, and the reference is the one without it. Here we go. And there you have it. To my ear, the reference sounded sort of clearer, the vocals sounded better, everything sounded less muddy and boxy, and it just sort of sparkled a bit more. It actually sounded like it was the one that had all the fancy mix bus processing on it, but it was actually the opposite. So there you have it. Now, as that was playing, you may have noticed this screen was kind of moving around a bit, and this is something that has also been enhanced from Reference 1. Now, it's not a new feature, okay? We had this Trinity display in Reference 1, but it has been enhanced, and right now, if I open this up, I have the level line selected. And well, now I just deselected it, but there it is on again. And what this does is it shows us a frequency plot of how does our original mix here compare it to our reference. So let me run that again. And what I'm going to do halfway through is freeze the plot or the graph so we can take a closer look at it. And to freeze things, you just hit Control and click anywhere in here. So I'm going to do that. Here we go. Myself right, so now we have a visual representation comparing these two mixes, and it's exactly what my ears hear. Okay, so this green line here, which I've frozen, is basically telling us that our original mix has less high end in it. Okay, you can see it's showing less high end compared to our reference. More of this kind of boxy area in the middle, which my ear was definitely picking up on. And it's also showing that it had a little bit more low end. Okay, when you trace this line here, you might notice, see those two moving things, readouts there. When you move your cursor over here, you can get an exact readout at any point. So for example, here, I'm at about 6,400 hertz and it's -4. So I have, almost half a dB less information in my original mix than in my reference. But this is super neat. See, my original mix did sound dark and boxy, and this graph shows us that that's exactly what it was. Okay, so that's kind of neat. So compared to reference one, this is just so much less clunky. In reference one, we had to select frequency points that we could hone in on. There was a lot of kind of extra work, whereas now we don't have to do anything. We have a complete readout of the full frequency spectrum at all times, and it updates itself in real time. It's super neat. Absolutely love this feature. Real quick, I want to show another thing that's really, really neat. Let me just get rid of this green line now. If we go into our settings, okay, and if we go over to the level line EQ match difference section, by default, it's set to difference, which is what we've been looking at. If we set this to match and get out of here, now it changes things. In fact, it basically just reverses what we're going to see. So depending on how your brain works or how you want to think about things, you can set this up accordingly. Now, when I run the mix, what this is going to show us is what EQ curve will we have to add to our current mix for it to sound like our reference mix. So let me say that again in different words. It essentially draws an EQ match for us, okay, like Pro Q3 would, for example. So let me just run it. It'll make sense in a second. Right, so it's the exact opposite of what we just had. It's saying that in order for us to get our current mix to sound like the reference, we'd have to add, a high shelf, right? Do a little scoop out here, do this, and we should, in theory, sound more like our reference. So again, you sort of just have to decide which way you want to think about things. Either way is effective. Just make sure you know which one you're on. But that's really, really neat. I mean, I think in certain applications, it would make more sense to have it set to the match feature like this, where you're just trying to make something sound like something else. So that's really, really cool. And that's also new to this update. All right, now there's two other things we can look at that, to be honest, I don't make much use of. As a mixer exclusively, I don't do mastering. I don't make use of these. But if we open up the Trinity display menu, we have punch dots and stereo width. Now the stereo width is pretty self-evident. It's going to give us info on the width or narrowness, I guess, of our mix. And we could compare it to other mixes or other masters. And the punch dots is going to give us information on the dynamics of our mix or master. It's going to let us know, are we more or less dynamic? Now, I'm not going to get into these because I've honestly hardly used them. I find the level line is all I need for my purposes, but I did want to point them out. If you want more information on these, go check out the video that Tom Frampton has posted on his website. He goes over it. It's pretty self-evident stuff. All right, I just wanted to mention that. Okay, now let's compare my mix to some commercial stuff, okay? Because so far I've just been sort of comparing to myself to see if my own processing was good or not. Turns out it wasn't. So I've actually muted all of that, and I've moved things over here to reflect my new mix bus chain, which is much, much more simple. So let's compare it to some Faith Hill. She's the artist that I chose. I thought she kind of sounded maybe someone like this song. So let's take a look at that. And to do that, all I got to do is click here. Okay, to load some new songs. I've got two songs from Faith Hill that I just bought called The Way You Love Me and This Kiss. Let's bring them in. All right, so I'm going to select these guys here, and I'm going to, instead of doing a mirror here, mirror is when you're comparing your mix to the same song, an alternate mix of the same song. We want free here. Okay, I'm going to select free for both of them, and we want level match for both of them. Okay, so now what we should be able to do is compare these two and see how they sound. Let's check this out. For now, I'm just going to leave the Trinity display off. We're just going to use our ears. Here we go.
Driving me crazy. Ooh, I love the way you just in time learn to read right through your lines. Your game is in my path. Ooh, to feel the way I feel with your arms ahead. Believed every word you said. I gave myself to you.
All right, well, that's interesting. They definitely have a different sound. I wasn't quite as crushed by that as I thought I was going to be. Let's, I mean, Faith Hill sounds pretty darn good, but let's take a look at the other song and do the same kind of thing. And this time I'm actually going to select a range here. So if you do this here, you can kind of select different parts of the song, because what I want to do is compare the chorus of this Kiss to what I have. So I think that's the chorus there. Maybe I'm going to move that over one. Oops, sorry about that. Just give me one sec. Yeah, let's do this here. That should be it. Let's listen.
I let you in my head, believed every word you said. A feeling like this, it's centrifugal motion, it's perpetual bliss. Just in time, learn to read right through your lines. Your game is in my this kiss, this.
All right, for that one, I felt like there was a bigger gap between the two songs tonally. In my mix, sounded kind of boxy compared to this Kiss, which to my ear had a lot more high end and probably less kind of like 700 hertz to 2K, as I'm kind of guessing. That's how it sounds anyway. It just sounds a little more sheeny. Let's go back to the original one here, and I'm just going to make a selection here for this one. I think that's the chorus there. Let's just check that quick.
Ooh, I
No, it's actually here that the chorus starts, I think.
love the way.
Yeah. All right. So let's turn on the Trinity display now and see how I'm doing here. Now, of course, whenever you're referencing anything, we're not expecting or even hoping to see a flat line here. Like obviously they're different songs, so they're going to have different frequencies. So we're not expecting this to be the same, but I am curious to see how they compare. Let's have a listen. Oh, and by the way, if I go back into my my settings here, I've switched this back to difference. We're not on match anymore; we're on difference. So this is going to show us how our how my mix differs compared to Faith Hill. It's important to know which one you're on because they're exact opposites. All right, let's check this out.
I let you in my head, believed every word you said. I couldn't rather be. Ooh, to feel the way I woke up just in time. Learn to read right through your lines. Your game is in my past.
All right, so I took a snapshot of that, and yeah, it's sort of what I was expecting. I mean, you can see here that compared to The Way You Love Me, my mix has more of this kind of mid-range. Okay, so it sounds a bit more shrill, a bit harsher. I don't know that my mix sounds harsh, but it's certainly harsher than the Faith Hill song. And it has a lot less oomph to it, a lot less kind of girth through the low mids and a lot less sort of low end. I mean, down here we're like minus 2.5 dB at 330 hertz. So they are very different tonalities. Let's do the same thing with the other song. Let's go to This Kiss and let's see how this one compares.
I let you in my head, believed every word you said. I couldn't feel like this, it's centrifugal motion, it's perpetual. Woke up just in time, learn to read right through your lines. You gave.
Yeah, so in this one, I was exactly right with what I was hearing. You can see here that compared to This Kiss, I've got a lot less high end. Okay, so that was that sheen that I felt like I was lacking, or at least that it was different. I mean, lacking is all relative, right? It depends what you're going for, but I certainly have less high end. And then it also, I said it sounded kind of boxy, and you can see here I've got a big bump at about 1K, which is kind of that frequency range where things sound a little bit nasal and boxy. And in both mixes, I have this lack of kind of 300 hertz, 200 to 300 hertz area. And I remember when I was mixing this, I noticed that that there was kind of a hole there. I just couldn't fix it. Below 100 hertz, I'm pretty good, pretty even. But we can see here that in both cases, there's sort of a similar trend. I had more mid-range and like less low mids. So what do I do with that information? I couldn't tell you. It would depend on, if I was doing the official mix of this song, which I didn't, I'd have to speak with the artist or producer. We'd have to talk about things. But, all I'm really doing here is just showing you what this plugin can do. I may not change a thing. I mean, when I just listen to my mix, I don't really hear these issues. It's more just when we're A-Bing rapidly that we kind of see and hear them. But it's all pretty interesting to me. All right, let me switch gears here for 1 second. I have a different song pulled into a different session here. And what we're going to do here is compare my final mix of this song to an earlier mix of it that I did. And to be honest, this is probably the function that I use this plugin for the most, is comparing my current mix to an earlier revision. We have to make sure we're heading in the right direction, right? So here we go. I'm going to pull in an earlier mix, Wild Wind B1. All right. By default, mirror seems to be on here, and that's what we want because it's the same song. We don't want free in this case. We want mirror. Level match is on, which is good, and I'm going to hit track align as well. But before I press play, I'm going to try to fool the plugin a bit. I'm going to move the mix ahead in the timeline a bit so they're out of sync. And I'm also going to adjust the gain of the mix. I'm going to bring it down by like 6 dB. Now what should happen is Reference should be able to time align and, as well as align the volumes of these two mixes. So let's see what happens. It usually takes a few seconds for it to click into sync. Here we go. Oh, worked right away. Oh, no, it didn't.
Keep your head up, little one, and
There we go.
troubles leave behind.
I thought it was in sync there right away, but it was just a different part in the song. But you can see that it took about 10 seconds, and now the tracks are aligned, both in terms of their timing and also in terms of their volume. How cool is that? Now, normally I would do this from the actual mix session. I just happened to pull it into a new session here so I could mess with the timing for you. But this works from the full mix session as well. So let's now that they're aligned, let's take a look and see, if I actually helped, if my final mix was actually better than my first bounce. I'm going to turn on the Trinity line level here. Okay, so it's showing us that my final mix is a little brighter. I can hear that.
Keep your head up, little one, and troubles leave behind. Don't fall to pieces, little one, this soul has been designed.
And there we have it. This visual representation is basically telling us that we have more mid-range and kind of high-end and less low-end, and that's exactly what it sounds like. And in this case, I do prefer my final mix. I like the extra sheen and clarity that offers. Let's go over to where the band kicks in here. I'm just going to get rid of this green line I created. Let's see if we can hear the difference here. So here it is where the full band kicks in.
All your bad dreams, little one, will melt just like a cloud. Keep your good thoughts, little one, when the world gets loud. See the flowers, little one, also get up the rain.
Yeah, and it's the same thing here, and I prefer it. I think my final mix worked better. And we can see here that, at about 2K, I have about a dB more information. There's kind of a big wide bump of mid-range here and just a little bit less low end. And it makes the mix sound a little more polished and just a little more clear. So that's a super neat way you can use this plugin. I mean, I really can't say enough about Reference. I'm super happy about the update that just came out. It's made an already great thing even better somehow. So great job, Tom, in that. Definitely a plugin to consider. To all my TOURNA-MIXers, I hope you're having fun this month with the 2 contests. And as always, I can't wait to see who wins. We'll talk soon.